was twofold. One was to try and find a way to lobby and be an advocate for clubs and for all of us to ensure that the states that postponed their seasons to the spring, that in those high school states, that they would not impose a restriction against the club and high school overlap, so that we could figure out a way to live together. That's the first thing. The second thing is to address facilities, is that we came up with a suggestion that they could move to outdoors and be able to set up outdoors on the fields that were not necessarily being used, even in the fall and things like that as well, while this was happening, so that clubs could start up again and have a place to be able to practice, because likely the high school gyms are not going to allow them to come on in and compete in there, but to try and come up with a solution to do that. So I wrote a note on Monday to a woman named Carissa Niehoff. What I'm telling you guys right now is 100% confidential. I'm allowing Jimmy to share. I sent Jimmy, I didn't have the email of who's on this call, so I'm allowing Jimmy to share the letter that I sent to the executive director of the National Federation of High School Associations, reaching out with our ideas. And I do not want that letter to be forwarded to anybody. I mean, anybody. And but it's because I don't want to derail any conversations that we might be having with them. If, say, this shows up in the press and then they get pissed off or something like that and say, forget it, that would be detrimental to all of us. So I want to do it in transparency to share, but at the same time, I'm asking it not to be forward. In that letter, there's pretty much two things where we've asked for those things, is to work with the National Federation of High School Associations to come up with a plan where we want to actually be a resource to help them, but to be able to help facilitate the opening of this outdoor kind of play that could happen at schools and things like that as well, which would give our clubs a place to be able to practice and play in the fall, and as well as to work on that. She wrote back, the executive director wrote me back yesterday, and we're right now a very positive note, I would say, and we're looking to schedule a call. She's currently looking to schedule one on August 20th is the date that she has thrown out. So we're just trying to look at times and things like that as well. So we are trying to be out there to advocate on behalf of the clubs, and that to ensure that the stuff in the spring doesn't happen. Once we have that first conversation with them to better understand the high school landscape and things like that as well, and hopefully they'll become an ally of ours to advocate to the high school associations, then at that point we will have to try and look at, maybe there's ways that we can do scheduling, because they probably haven't come up with their scheduling yet, whereas we know when our qualifiers are, and hopefully to try and say, how can we coordinate schedules so that our qualifiers and championships are least impacted. Now, there will be some impact, no doubt, but are least impacted. So that's, as of literally, I get the email this morning. Actually, I'm trying to set up for the 20th. So that's a very fresh update on that side.
Let me ask you just a couple of questions, and then others may have questions also, but is obviously every region and state is not going to the spring. It's going to be a mixed bag. So are you thinking along the lines that we try to hold our normal season, or is there going to be some regions that'll do it in the spring and some in the winter? Thoughts like that? And anyway, let me start with that.
My gut would be is that we try to get people playing volleyball as early as we can for the sake of the clubs, and for them to be able to start getting going and getting membership going and everything else like that, so they have a way to be able to practice and whatever. So in the states that are not impacted, I would say run with it. Go and start your practices in your local competitions and everything else like that as well. When it gets to the ones that are being postponed, the high school seasons are being postponed. There's actually, we talked about, there's possibly an opportunity for us at that point for the people that want to play, for us to do something. And that's where we came up with this possibly doing outdoor courts and outdoor play to be able to do that in those regions as well. But really, when it comes to at the national level, it's really when we start getting into the qualifiers and the championships where we get impacted. And as we all know, it's not so easy to just say, oh, we'll just delay that 3 weeks, or we'll just delay that a month. That's if the convention center is available, right? I mean, and things like that as well. So right now we have yet, this is very premature when this is all just coming out very recently, as we know, but we have yet to be able to push it, but the dates or anything like that. But And as you all know, one other thing I want to add is, when our championships take place, 18s, we're looking at possibly trying to see if we can't push 18s to later. So it's not to conflict with high school, but pretty much when it comes to opens, that's Memorial Day weekend, and that's adults, so that doesn't affect with school. But girls, boys, and HPs, they take place the end of June, early July, and then mid to late July. We don't have much runway before the high school season starts for the 2021 season in August, and the membership season ends August 31. So there's not much wiggle room going on in those tournaments as well. So the one that we are already examining is 18s championship to see if there's a way to push that later. Right now, there is not. We checked. It's currently scheduled to be. I don't have the dates off the top of my head. I think it's in April, late April in Columbus, Ohio. We did already reach out to Columbus, and they have no availability to push us until after Thanksgiving or something like that. However, OVR does have a tournament in the convention center about 4 weeks later than us. So it's possible that we want to talk to the 18 qualifiers and everything else like that, and see if collectively we want to, discuss with OVR or not, if it makes sense, because then that would be able to push some of the qualifiers back, the 18s qualifiers back as well, if the tournament was pushed back.
Last question, and then we'll open it up. At our last meeting, we talked about, will USAV, can they tell us positive that we will have insurance, and it's going to be up to the region whether we have to cancel based on state laws and stuff like that? Or do you think there's this option that you come in and say, we've got to do it across the board?
Things can change because COVID can change, right? But right now, I don't foresee anything changing more than that. We've had epic buy-in on our current programming in the heart of the pandemic, when it was,
Right.
really hitting the fan, and we were allowed to come back. And it's not getting much worse. It's not getting better really right now, but it's not getting. It's there, and so I don't foresee that there being a change, but I can't tell you that we won't get a call from Epic at some point saying, what happens if there's some crazy spikes or things like that is right. But I would be under the impression right now that it's status quo is how we're doing it, as long as we follow the strictest federal, state, and local guidelines, that the insurance will hold.
Let's open it up for just a few questions from others, and then we'll move along.
Jimmy, this is Andy. I've got a couple of statements. One, the model for spring volleyball for schools that have spring volleyball is already out there. The California boys have been doing this for years. So if your region has to do a split season, the model's out there. You can start early. They go to school, even if the schools aren't allowing them to play, and then you could do it afterwards. The other thing is the championship is going to be in July. If no volleyball happens up until June, we've got bigger problems. The championship I would probably put that on your calendar in pencil, that the championships are all going to happen. Now, what we did with the beach championships is we had to modify the entry process. And that's always an option. We can always change. If no qualifiers happen and we start playing on, April 1st, people could do an April to June season and still have a championship. Your region can still conduct a 1 or 2 month season. The volleyball, like we've always done it in the past, is not going to happen this year. Most regions for sure. Other regions, even if you're playing in the fall, it's going to change. And I think Steve and Steve both said it. And Laura, these are awesome opportunities for us to change the way we do things. We can run, whether it's leagues or mostly local stuff or different kind of programming, because people still want to play volleyball. Lone Star and North Texas have already had their tryouts. We're in one of the top 3 or 4 states of the pandemic right now. Our numbers are not hurting. We're taking the safety precautions, and knock on wood, we haven't had any outbreaks. The numbers look promising. The clubs that have facilities and the decent sized clubs all are having about the same numbers. It's the 1 and 2 mom and pop team clubs that are hurting a little bit. So our numbers will be down, but I don't think they're going to be down nearly as much as we thought they were. And we're in a bad area. I mean, we're in a bad, a hot spot.
Thank you, Andy. And would you share that link and information that you talked about, it's only out there, to Steve, let him post on his website?
What link you referring to?
You said
Jamie, can you elaborate for the group on what the task force talked about with equipment, net systems, and balls for outdoors, if some of them don't have those, and what we're going to try to do?
So one of the things we're going to try to do as well is we're going to reach out to our partners, Molten, as well as Sports Imports, to try and see if we can't get, we have already reached out to them. I have a call with Melissa Dawson at Molten tomorrow. Cassie was reaching out to Sports Imports. I know she's reached out. I don't know if she's heard back on that as well, but to try and see if we can't even get special offers or cooperation from them to be able to provide to clubs, schools, whoever wants that, the equipment to make that necessary as well. So we've already started that reach out process. Thank you for bringing that up, Steve.
Anyone else? You might want to note, I'd ask you to look in the chat and see what Cindy wrote. That's pretty interesting that they've closed and I'm sure many of us are facing the same problems with facilities where if schools close, whether they're open or closed, they're closing down to outside groups, including outdoor, Jamie, to their grounds. So that could be a problem that we incur. Anybody else have a question for Jamie? And I'm going to share with you our survey, which I thought was pretty interesting.
I have a quick question. This is Kylie from Northern California. Our youth sports guidance just came out last week, and we're the same as Cindy. It's no competition, events, tournaments, anything indoor, outdoor. Our teams can do individual skill building together, but maintaining social distance. And if they are indoors, they have to wear a mask, which I know we've talked about before is not safe for our athletes to be wearing masks while doing volleyball activities. So we have pushed back our boys season, which was supposed to start August 1st for tryouts. And we recently pushed tryouts tentatively to start the second week of November. But if we keep having to push it back and we end up not having our boys bid tournament, which is the second week of January, will there be flexibility in the deadline to have that bid tournament for the boys if we're having to continue to push things back so that they can, if we can hold a bid tournament at some point, how far can we push it back to where they can still win a bid to boys nationals?
That question for me?
Yeah.
Honestly, I have to check with my team to be perfectly honest on that as well. This year, 2020, as you know, we were pretty much allowing people to try and reschedule and postpone their qualifiers or tournaments. Boys wasn't really affected as much as the girls certainly was, but we were trying to be as creative as possible. We wanted to get those qualifiers off, and we're looking at creative ways. So again, I need to discuss with my team, but I would believe we would certainly be open to being flexible on trying to allow for postponement for later ones, as long as it was, at that point. I mean, our biggest thing, of course, is trying to know when the bids are there so we can then, when they're all out there, so we can start doing the scheduling and everything else like that as well. But I think yours is fairly early, isn't it, in the process?
Yeah, it's January 10th and 11th, I think.
Yeah, I believe. Well, I want to talk to my team, but I would believe there would be we would be open to flexibility for allowing you guys to be able to push it back later if you thought that would be helpful in being able to get it off versus having to cancel it.
Yeah, it's one of our main concerns from our boys clubs is how far is it going to be pushed back, because essentially our high school season for boys and girls are going to be going at the same time, and they're going to be able to start their high school tryouts mid-December, and their season will run January to the end of March, I think. And CIF out here has stated that they are lifting that suspension of allowing club and high school to go at the same time. Sorry, the dogs are being noisy. So that's a good thing, but then we have the concern of having the players picking either club or high school and having to make that choice. So, and then we think of all the coaches that also coach boys high school, girls high school, boys club, boy and girls club. It's gonna be tough out here in California trying to do all of it at once.
That's part of that whole choice between high school is one of the things that we very much emphasized in the letter that we sent to the NFHS, is that we're saying that pretty much the people, it's a lose, 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 but especially the biggest losers happen to be the athletes if they're being forced to choose between high school and club. And so what we're really trying to do is advocate for a situation that there's no restriction, so that you're not putting the athlete in that situation where they have to choose between club, or maybe they get better skill set learning, as well as maybe college recruiting, and then high school, which is the school that they love and they just want to, wear their town's pride or whatever else like that as well. We're coming from the angle that we don't want the athletes to be put in that situation to have to choose, and so they can do both, because we think that in that scenario that'll have the least impact on people registering for club, versus, of course, if you say there's a fine line, you have to choose between one or the other. Some are going to pick, there will be some that'll pick club over high school, and some are going to pick high school over club, and then we'll certainly be impacted. So we're trying to minimize the impact as much as possible. If we can get that resolved, that there's not going to be that restriction, then that gives us a lot more flexibility to be able to then think creatively about ways to work with them, so that practices and et cetera, can go on simultaneously, if that needs that.
Jamie, quick question.
Yeah.
In planning, assuming that we're planning for a regular season, will the qualifiers and the national tournaments post in advance a refund policy so that clubs can plan in the event that worst case scenario and they know, what to expect?
Yeah, I think we currently have a refund policy. In 2020, we became very, very vocally or publicly open about how it was. We made it a very short window. I think it was really up to 2 weeks before the tournament date that clubs were allowed to refund and not accept their bid if they didn't feel safe coming, and things like that as well. Obviously, I don't know. I think it's premature right now. I mean, as we know, Russia has a vaccine. I'm kidding. And so, it's premature right now. But I would say that for us to say that you can just give back your bids, because we know we've been strict on that, historically, because it causes chaos. But if COVID is still raging strongly in the spring or the winter and spring or things like that, you'll certainly see that flexibility like you saw this year with us trying to do that, so that the clubs feel comfortable wanting to be able to try out.
Jamie, actually, the one of the concerns is with the qualifiers, not the national tournament. One thing that we as a region voted for at our board meeting the other day was, if you're you have to post your refund policy up front where I sign up. That way I'm aware of what I'm stepping into, and we want to make sure, and that's another one of those where it needs to be nationwide. Qualifiers will do this so that we have the consistency. We understand that there are risks associated with hosting an event. However, that is something that these people who sign up for these events need to know, what their policy that they're stepping into.
Hey, Steve and Jimmy, this is Andy. The qualifiers are required to post their refund policy, like you said, Steve, where you register. USA Volleyball has a refund policy for people who have been denied entry into the tournament, but each individual qualifier has the right to post their policy for what it is. And that's a requirement on the qualifier side of things.
Steve Kenyon, my question is, you just made that comment. Is your suggestion that you feel that they need to be consistent across all qualifiers? Is that what you were saying? Instead, so that it's, if you're going to be, for any of them, even though that we know that many of these are privately run or whatever else, that they need to be a consistent private cancellation policy?
It would be something I think we should look into, and we will. We do have that group, the qualifiers group that gets together and meets, and maybe they just said that it cannot be. This is the minimum that you must meet. You must guarantee at least this much. Because I do understand, especially those who had the events that got canceled. They got hurt, but that's something that we, like I said, the people who are planning to come. Some of them didn't, they felt like they didn't, it wasn't published enough for them to know. Now, that maybe the fact that you don't read the paperwork, but like I said, I think it could be a discussion. Maybe it's something that we don't need, but I had to field a bunch of questions on some qualifiers, so.
Okay. A couple of things. Most of you are doing this in the chat room. Put what your region, states are doing from a school standpoint on volleyball sports, and we'll keep a copy of that and send that out later. Let me share with you, I think I did this last time and I thought it was pretty interesting, is the survey. This is our second survey. And to parents, pretty interesting. The first one that we did, and I'm gonna flip over to that. Here's if they were basically saying, hey, if club was getting ready to start in the next 30 days, would you participate? Would you sign up today? At that time, it was 65%, with 50% saying absolutely and 25% saying most probable. If we, today, the one that just went out about a week ago, that moved up to 85%, saying that they would do it. So parents are biting at the bit to do this. And I'll share this survey. A couple of other points is we asked about safety precautions. What is most important to you? Cleaning equipment was the highest at 86%, sanitizing stations, taking temperatures, social distancing, and staff and spectators, if allowed, was above 50%, all of those. Another interesting fact is would you want the club to publish their COVID safety protection plan? 64% said yes, 10% said no, the other ones didn't matter. And I thought this was important. We are requiring this from our region, but do you want to know the refund policy of the club? 82% said absolutely. I want to know what the deal is due to unpredictions. And then finally, and there's a few other little things, but this part what I thought was pretty interesting is what type of tournament would you attend? 2-day tournament was the highest at 69%. And then would you stay in a hotel, whether it's a 1-day by distance or 2-day requiring it, and 66% said yes. And then we asked some questions about modified tournaments on single days, how many teams need to stay in the court area, and it give predictions on that. If you're not doing something this with your region, I certainly would encourage it. And again, I'll send that out to everybody after our meeting. We're recording this session too. Any other questions for Jamie? He may have to jump off. So anything while he's on, guys? Any other questions?
I actually have one. This is Jen. Jamie, if you're still there.
Right.
He may not be. I guess this is to anybody then. Hi, Jamie.
Sorry, I had to urgent hopped on, but I heard my name.
It's okay. No, I just have a question. Has there been any medical guidance on wearing masks while participating? We did it while for our HP camp, and the kids actually responded really well. If they needed a breath, they just kind of walked away and pulled it away. And I know all of the colleges that have started practicing and may now have to stop are wearing it too. So I just didn't know if the Return to Play Task Force has dealt with or could deal with any guidelines on wearing masks during participation, because that's what we're getting from our clubs a lot.
There was not, to the best of my knowledge, specific, guidance on wearing. It was more like whether they felt safe. On the medical input we were getting was whether they felt safe, if at all, from groups going out. However, from the USOPC, I remember there were conversations taking place there, and it was all about that balance between being able to breathe and all the other. So it was vague, to be honest with you. Now the USOPC does it for many sports. You got things like track and field, as well as which is very cardio versus say curling or something, right? But no, I don't think there's a specific guidance. But you're saying, Jen, that you guys did impose it, and it was responded to quite favorably.
Correct. Yeah, state of Wisconsin, you have to wear a mask at all times unless you're indoor with family only.
Mm-hmm.
And so we said, okay, we're going to try it, and the kids did amazing with it.
Were they mostly using cloth, or were they using those kind of thin blue?
Both.
Yeah.
Both, and the coaches they social distanced themselves pretty well. The kids did, but then when they got done with the drill, they all kind of just walked away and pulled the mask away, and we had a lot more kind of breathing breaks, but they did really well with it.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yep.
I don't think there is specific guidance
Okay.
on it though, and I think even at AAUs, Steve Bishop, keep me honest, but AAUs, they let them all play. They were not wearing them while they were playing. I think it was if you were on the sideline, if you were line judging or anything else like that, you had to do it. But besides that, no.
Okay.
That's correct.
Hey, this is Cindy. So the state of Washington's epidemiologists and all of their medical people have told us that their next restriction that they're going to place is wearing face coverings at all times, unless the only activities that will be excluded will be something that's strenuous, and they're going to put a continued heart rate on that. So they're going to say, if you're doing something with a continued heart rate of X, that's when you can remove your face covering. Otherwise, you'll wear it everywhere unless you're in your own house with your family members. So that's their next move. But right now, any youth sports, they're tied together. Any youth sports, you have to maintain 6-foot social distancing, and they're allowing those to remove the face covering if you're at 6-foot social distancing and you're inside or outside while participating in sport. But we anticipate that's going to change. So we will have an opportunity, I guess, to gather some data, because I'm sure that's coming next.
Any other questions for Jamie? Otherwise, we'll move on. We just got a few more and then open up for comments.
Jimmy, just to follow up to that last discussion, I just put a link to the CDC page on guidance for wearing masks. I think the important part there is scroll down to feasibility and adaptations. And it talks about people who are engaged in high intensive activities like running may not be able to wear a mask. Anyway, there's a little bit of guidance there, latest from the CDC for the group.
Thank you. And Steve, we still appreciate you. That website seems kind of be a one-stop find everything that you guys are doing. Appreciate that. Now, I'm just
right now. So.
Okay. I have a question for other regions. If you're running into problems, if you're running single day events and you're charging gate, do you have ideas of how you're doing this without having to have a cash ticket station at the event? Doing it electronically, selling it to the clubs? Any ideas out there? Has anybody thought that far in advance?
There are two things happening in our region with AAU basketball. They're having coaches of an AAU basketball team purchase a wristband for players' parents and whatever the limit is in the area in Minnesota, as far as number of people who can be in the stands. And then the coach picks them up and distributes them to parents, and that's their admission. For volleyball on their summer leagues, they would just have, they would have an official stand by a bucket and put like $2 on the bucket and kind of just oversee. When they just put a bucket out there with $2 signage on it, they got like $12. But then when they just had an official standing there, everyone ended up paying. So we're seeing it in several different models. The other thing that they're doing for the facilities is they're not putting down bleachers. People bring their own chairs to the event. And the parents seem to really like that aspect of it. So there you go.
Anyone else?
Jimmy, our event went cashless last year. We used Sport Wrench and everything was cashless. And our Boston event, which is 90 courts, I think we had 2 people had to have a cash transaction out of the 35,000. So we're probably going to use that system throughout all of next year for sure.
Jimmy, here in Florida, we're heading to more of a cashless model as well. We use a platform called Ticket Spice now, which seems to be pretty easy plug and play kind of model.
Thank you. You're only doing 2-day events in Florida. You're not doing single day?
Correct.
Okay.
We run our guest reg through TM to sign, and that works pretty well because parents can, and we've done this for a few years now, they can purchase their wristband ahead of time, and all they have to do is show their receipt on their phone, and then they get their wristband, and that's it.
Okay. Has anyone online made a decision to postpone starting your season in the fall? Or is everybody waiting to see what's going on in November?
Jimmy, it's Sandy from Great Lakes. The governor has decided that we're postponing. We're in phase 4, which means 50 people in an area, but he's put all sports, adults and kids, into level 1 and 2. That means we can only have training and we can only have intra-team scrimmages, no competition at all. So my question for Jamie is, the earliest that we would have a season, a USA season, is January. And that's the earliest. Is there a way to have a reduced USA membership cost? What my club directors are saying is that JVA is only $18 per kid, and they actually see most of the clubs in Illinois going JVA this year because it doesn't look like we'll be able to participate in qualifiers for the girls, and we won't be able to get to the national tournament for the boys because of the high school season.
I was muted. We haven't discussed that internally, Sandy, right now. The current plan is not to have a reduced thing. Typically, most of the way we look at our memberships is that it's not based on a pro rata or anything else like that. It's if you're coming into the, for the programming or not for the season. I know Andy Reitinger has thoughts on this as well, because he and I have discussed this at length. So Andy, you might be able to help chime in as well. But currently we have not done that. I mean, Sandy, we're at a business survival mode at USA Volleyball right now. And I mean, the $20 that we charge compared to the 3,000 to 5,000 they play for club, it's not a huge thing. But I mean, there's a lot of things that are going on right now, and we're trying to ensure that business survival takes place. We've got to send teams to the Olympic Games in 2021 and have them trained and prepared for that, as well as provide all the services that we're doing at for the across the regions and everything else like that as well. So right now, Sandy, that is probably not a line of the lines of our current plan. Andy, do you have anything to add that you think to add to that?
I think you really touched on it. Our especially our insurance and our stuff is if you play one day, it's the same as if you play 365 days for the year. So it's hard to break that down. And as a regional commissioner, I hate to say this, but the largest chunk of what people are paying in the registration goes more to my region then it goes to USA Volleyball. And I know that there's parts of the country that are hit by JVA and AAU a lot more. So it's difficult for me to discuss the conversation because I don't have that threat. So any threat is perceived as a threat, and anything that could help would help. So I know that I would hope that Jamie and staff would be sensitive to those areas that are having some really stiff JVA AAU competition, and maybe it's not a financial we reduce your fees in your region because you have the competition, but maybe there's something else we could do with marketing or social marketing or other things that don't cost the organization money but can help thwart the threat of JVA or AAU into those regions.
We've tried to invest, as you've probably seen in the last 6 months, we've been heavily investing in a lot of content that we've been trying to get out there to the regions, to the clubs and the club directors and everything else like that, with content during the whole COVID thing as well. So we've been doubling down on trying to provide extra resources and things like that to our membership.
Doesn't help us, unfortunately. If the earliest they could do anything USA is January, and really not participate in anything else, I'm afraid we're going to lose quite a few.
Sandy, would a league membership work with an upgrade?
I'm not a complete expert on this. I'd have to talk to my team about this. Just to be fair, about different options that could be out there. I just would love to talk to our membership team.
Sandy, is AAU allowing them to play before January?
Is AAU allowing them? No, not to our knowledge, but are they doing it? Yes.
Oh, yeah. So the it's really the state restricting the ability for you guys to start, and people who don't have to follow rules because they don't have anybody in the region looking at them are breaking the rules. Okay, I understand.
Let me interrupt just a second. If in the chat room, if you guys, we had originally planned once we got into September, or maybe it was August, to go to 2 times a month with these conversations. If you would put a note in the chat if you want to see us do 2 times a month here through October, or just once a month. So we'll have kind of a straw poll on that. Any other comments, folks? That's the only thing that I had. Any other comments from anybody? Questions?
Jimmy, just to go back to Sandy's point, what we're planning on doing in New England is try to get outdoors as much as possible in the fall, and using the tryout membership, which is upgradable. So we're going to try to get kids who normally don't play, juniors, high school kids, to come over and play a little bit of outdoor stuff. And then they have an upgradable membership to come back when we do open up indoors and have tryouts.
I think it'd be great if the regions would share what exactly you're doing and say, this is what we're planning, so that we all have more things to consider, ideas.
Yeah, this is Cindy from Puget Sound. As restricted as we are, we're doing the exact same thing as Dave, where since everybody's membership, everybody that we have in a membership right now goes through October 31st. So we have the tryout membership available probably about the 10th or so of September, because we're going to hang on just to make sure that Sports Engine's ready to go. But we'll make the tryout membership available so anybody who wants to buy it can buy it. Anybody who needs to buy it because they've never been a USAV member could buy it. And that goes through the end of December. When we talked to member services, we were told we could actually make that date further out, still only 4 months, but we could start the sale of it later. So we might consider doing that just because we don't know when full start is going to happen. And we are really doing the math because nothing's off the table. We are considering changing our membership price and decreasing it, even though we are in just as much of a survival mode as everyone else. We just don't know that we are going to be able to convince a family to spend $72 for a full junior membership. We already have our trout membership as upgradable. So, you know, it's only $15 out the gate, but then that comes off the top. So we're really just teeter-tottering around trying to figure out what we're going to do as far as what their upgraded membership is going to cost, because at the end of the day, that's what pays the bills in our region, because we are not planning to be able to have a single event because our governor is, for the foreseeable future, not allowing more than 5 people to gather. So, and no, absolutely no spectators. And indoors, you have to give everybody 400 square feet. So each individual inside the building has to have 400 personal square feet, even if they're just sitting. So we're struggling to figure out how we're going to keep the lights on in our region.
Thank you, Sandy. Others want to share?
Hey, this is Kevin from the Jiva region. This year we made the decision to have a $30 membership, which is non-competition. It kind of replaces our tryout membership. We foresee teams being able to practice at a limited basis, kind of under, right now we're under almost like clinic style rules, keeping the kids fairly spaced, only 10 kids per court is the way they're able to do stuff right now. And we see that kind of maintaining itself through the fall. So we made the decision to do that. We think that will help get the membership at least in the door, and then it's upgradable to the full membership if we can try to find a way to get competition in somehow. But that's something that we've put in play, and we just don't feel that you know, we had a tryout membership, but we got rid of that because we really don't see like a tryout being an actual possibility in the fall, just with how they're allowed to get together and play.
Thank you, Kevin. Anyone else?
Okay, this is Nancy. And okay, we're actually lowering our membership $10 this year to $40 total. Partially because of everything that happened last year, because they got very limited use of their membership last year with everything stopping almost at the beginning of the season. And so we were going to lower it a little bit just to say, here, look what we're doing for you, because you didn't get to play last year for the majority of people. But then with everything else going on, just trying to see what we can do. So we're taking a $10 hit per player. And we do have a tryout that then we can upgrade to that. Just a $10 tryout that comes off the top of that 40 if they go to a full membership.
Hey Nancy, this is Laura. Do you guys charge a team fee? Are there other charges in addition to a membership that are charged to the clubs?
When they pay their membership, everything is free. Clinics, yep, used to be when we did Impact was free. Everything, they just paid their membership and everything else was free. There were no a la carte charges. There's no team charges. But we also are different in the only tournaments that we run are our regionals and our bid tournament. Our clubs run all of our tournaments. We do not run any tournaments out of the region office except for regionals and the bid.
Anybody else?
Yeah, this is John. Here in New York, we're in kind of a special situation right now. We started off being the absolute worst in the country, and we're now probably one of the best in the country, particularly here in upstate New York, but we still have a governor that's being pretty tough. We can practice now. We can do camps as long as they're outdoors or really spaced out. Most of them camps are going outdoors now. But our high schools and elementary schools, K through 12, whatever, are definitely going hybrid. where they'll go to school 2 days a week, one group, and another group will go 3 days a week, and then they'll switch the following week and keep that going on with very few sports being allowed to play. I think soccer's being allowed to play at back to school, and a couple of the other outside events are being able to play, but volleyball and football have officially been moved to spring. I don't think that I can start my season. We don't usually start playing. We just practice until January. So I think I might be able to start my season in January, but I don't want to run a split season. So we pretty much decided to go, hey, they can make up their choice if they want to play high school or if they want to play club, or they want to go until a certain time and then switch to high school, or they can play both at the same time. That's going to be completely up to them. And I think it's the only way we can do it here in upstate New York.
Let me interrupt just a second before we get off. In the chat room, make a comment if your state or region the high school league allows players to play outside sports, or is there a requirement that they can't? I'm curious. Ours will allow it, but the high school coaches could be hard-nosed about it. Any other comments around your areas? What you're doing? I have a question for Laura. Aren't you South Dakota?
We sure are.
So maybe you could figure out from the Sturgis area how they're doing protocol and getting away with it, and we could share it with the volleyball groups.
I don't think I want to touch that Sturgis area at all in any way. But what we are doing, because we have, like 3.5 states, or 3 1/3 state maybe, South Dakota's, moving on, but with Minnesota moving to spring, the fall leagues are really, within the facility owners for our volleyball club directors have really amped up what they want to do. I mean, they need to. They got to make money and get people into the facilities. But what we're going to do from a region, which we've never done before, we've just talked about it since March, and now here we are. We're going to run a players league, and kind of just like the old grassroots kind of model where it's team registration. You got a USAB membership. It's basically $5 a night for participants to get 2 matches in. We're going to get some officials hired, pay them, and our goal is just to break even. And with the facilities, the high schools have been the high school coaches are supporting this because it gets them a chance to see their players and evaluate them without using a contact day during fall training. And so it can be a fundraiser for the high school, and then it can also be, they get to keep concessions. We just need the facility. So we've been pushing that. Our high school coaches are really excited about it. Last night, the Minnesota State High School League just made an exception to the rule that players can do the club fall league and their fall training with their high schools, and it's not in conflict. What we don't know right now in Minnesota exactly when the season's going to be. It was first put out there that it was going to occur between March 15th and May 15th, but that was just on social media that was just a general idea of how the phasing of the new seasons, but we really don't know when that's going to occur. What we also don't know is if players will have a waiver once high school season actually begins and club is going full. One of the things that we're looking at is changing when we'll have our tryout dates. So we're meeting with our Minnesota High School Volleyball Coaches Association, club facility owners basically, and the region on Friday to make sure that we can all work together on how the athletes, can not have to choose. They can do both and make it fair.
One of the things, this is Jen, one of the things we're doing too to kind of help provide services as a region office is we're kind of taking on, I guess a clearinghouse would be the best way to do it. We, every year we run a players looking for clubs and a clubs looking for players website. So for those kids who, don't get an offer, or those clubs who need a middle on their 13th team or whatever, we're going to take that same idea and do it for facilities this year. So we're going to reach out to all of our facility owners because a lot of our clubs practice out of schools, but we do have some larger facilities. And so we're going to reach out to as many as we can and use the club directors also and say, okay, do you have space at your facility? And we're going to kind of do that same type of thing. Like, here's the facilities looking, facilities who have available space page for our club directors. And then also, clubs looking for facilities so that the people in those areas, parents are very resourceful. If somebody has, can put up a net in their garage or something like that, or their barn, since we're in Wisconsin, just that type of stuff. And so we're really trying to facilitate that type of collaboration and trying to make the region office a resource for that kind of investment in being a member of our region.
Good idea.
Hey, Jimmy, this is Andy again. I just looked at the survey that Steve Kenyon sent out and looked at your survey and our survey that we sent out. And it's interesting to me in that each year USA Volleyball loses about 30% of its members. And I think that's the people that are answering these surveys probably fall within that 30%. I think the key for us as regions is going to be, how do we accommodate new players? And things like what Laura's doing with the outside the box play register, it's different than a club team playing in a weekend tournament. If people are doing, I know a lot of people in our area are doing leagues. The high school season got pushed back a month, so they ran leagues. We had 2,000 people playing in leagues for a month. So thinking about how we can attract the new players, I think, is going to be the biggest opportunity we have as regional commissioners. And these are the opportunities that Steve and Steve are talking about. We can actually probably take this and grow in the future if we work hard on identifying how to get those new players in.
Thank you, Andy. And I love the idea of beach or outdoor, because it should theoretically cut costs down and you can track some of those new players who's got sticker shock.
Jimmy, I'd like to hop in on Andy's comments, because there are opportunities in this market if we will look for the opportunities. We obviously know there are challenges, but there are opportunities. So here's some opportunities that I challenge all of us to think about. Parks and Rec is going to get demolished because governments are not going to be able to afford to fund those. YMCAs are being challenged all over the entire country by membership reductions and revenues and fundraisers. They can't have fundraisers, which is one of the big ways they generate money. So how can we, as a group of 41, start thinking about those opportunities and start to put some programming in place, working with our clubs and the leadership in our regions to create some opportunities to plug some of these holes. So where Parks and Rec and YMCAs won't be able to offer programming, can the private sector come in, which is us, and the clubs in our organizations, and try and find solutions for them. I know some of you in your states are literally at a complete screeching halt, and that may not apply to you right now, but for those who are not, if we think about the opportunities, there's another opportunity for us to grow and add new members there.
Thank you, Steve. And if anyone has specifics of what you've already done, like what Steve's talking about, share it with the group on email.
And this, Steve, also the Return to Play group, we are working on a simple guideline of, introduction to outdoor ball, with all the variations of quads, trips, sixes. So how to play that, how to implement it, basic rules differences, so that once we get that approved, that'll be something that you can distribute to your clubs to help them as they start moving forward with some of these ideas. So, once again, good stuff coming out of the Return to Play group.
Thank you, Steve.
Hey, Steve, I guess both Steves. One of the things, and this is kind of related, but to that point, we've been looking for kind of outdoor regulations. Wisconsin, we have a very finite outdoor season, and just kind of looking for regulations on depths of sand and what equipment and that type of stuff. And no one at USA Volleyball seems to find either indoor or outdoor regulations. So if either committees can take that, or that can come out of the Return to Play, maybe encompassing that, like, here are the safety regulations for just play, Or if anyone has that, that would be great if they could send it to me.
All right. That is something I worked on last week. We're gonna, I believe we're gonna try to get it approved pretty quickly. There's a few additions. I was waiting, hopefully, you know, like Jamie was talking about, getting deals worked out for, you know, suppliers of balls, suppliers of nets, so we can add that also. But it doesn't have to be sand. Remember, grass. Grass is an awesome opportunity. It doesn't require creation of a court. It just requires a field. You know what? And if we got kids out there playing in fields, the social distancing is not all that difficult. Hey, run over there. You know, and when we're playing, when it's 2-on-2, you got, you know, you almost got the 400 square foot per person. So let's, like I said, I think we can do this. I really do. And like I said, that document we are working on, it's got a list of, you know, how to get. Grass is not legal in Texas. I don't think that's the grass we're talking about, Andy.
My question, I just have one question, because I agree with the grass side of it, but it's like people want to put up nets and go out and practice. Where do we go then with insurance, for insurance?
Nancy,
You know, the problem I see with that is if somebody wants to put a net in their backyard, am I going to give them an insurance certificate so they can take kids over there and practice?
Nancy, we're dealing with this here in Florida. I'd be glad to tell you what we're doing in the group. If you're at a public space, a public park, a soccer field, back end of a softball field or whatever, and it has a commercial address, we're sanctioning that. We are staying away from sanctioning a court in someone's backyard. We spoke with the insurance company about this, and there are a lot of inherent risks there. When you have people, you know, you're providing coverage for someone's private residence. So there are some cautions there. Encourage them to go get a public park space or something of that nature, and the insurance certificate is much easier to issue without challenge from Epic.
Anyone else? We're coming up a little past the hour, and we're going to cut it off. Any other important comments until next time?
Well, I do have a question then for those of you who are doing the grass stuff. Are your states requiring your businesses to perform any of the long laundry lists that the Labor and Industries Division is requiring before the kid or the employee, so the customer or the employee, steps inside those 4 lines of that volleyball court? And what I mean is, are they doing the temperature checks? Are they doing the signing of the COVID questionnaire? Are they doing contact tracing? Are they doing all of that stuff before they step inside the lines of that volleyball court? Because that is now a business operating in a big open field.
Cindy, I'll answer first, since I just commented a moment ago. We don't have a contact tracing requirement here in Florida. So, I mean, we're just following our state guidelines. And those things that you mentioned, some of those are required. And yes, we are requiring those. The individual requesting a sanction from our office has to submit a plan. And once they submit the plan, we consider that's what they're doing. If they stray from that, then obviously the onus will be on them to explain why. But that's how we're doing.
Cool. Thank you, Steve.
Last chance, anybody?
Yeah, Cindy, we're doing the same in New England. We have a lot of clubs are using Google Forms, which just tallies it on a Excel spreadsheet. As the kid shows up, you check off that they've done that. And I think everybody's doing temperature checks. It's not required, but I think everybody's doing it just to be safe up here.
Yeah, we got the same thing. The onus is on the operator to follow the rules. And then they submit a plan when they're going to do a sanctioned activity. We haven't really gotten started on that because high school's going full tilt in Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee. So we're getting ready for the club season. And like I said, I've got I'm meeting with my club directors next Wednesday and talking to them about being ready to pivot if something happens, to be able to offer pre-tryout training, outdoor activities, and moving forward. But like I said, the opportunities are there. We have to definitely think a little creatively to do this. I feel for you, Cindy, because it sounds like you are in about the worst of the worst. You in California. So like I said, if we can do anything to help, if we can help you with ideas or throw, if you want to throw stuff at us, and maybe we can bounce something back to you. But
click on our donation link. Oh, I'm just kidding.
yeah, and as far as we did not reduce our membership rates. However, we are looking at we added a committee. We ended up with a budget surplus at the end of the year. So we're looking at how to reinvest that into programming and stuff like that across the region to give to improve the experience for everyone. So that's what we're planning on doing as a region right now.
Hey, Jimmy.
Yeah.
I wanted to say it's really nice to see Joni Williams smiling back at us there.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
Maybe she could say a word or two, sign us off.
Hey guys, it's great to be back. I just want to say thanks for all the prayers and cards, and I love my volleyball family. You guys have been wonderful, and I'm almost back completely. So thanks. They can't keep me from talking, which is what they try to do. But hey,
it's Joe. Joni's making a lot of progress, and if you want to get some relevance in your life, be riding in a car, look over there and have on your 45th anniversary and have your spouse suddenly not be able to speak a sensible word to you. It will simply align your priorities, and suddenly the challenges that we all face are not nearly as challenging as what you have. I'm very thankful and blessed to be where we are today. But I do have one question, if I can, Jimmy. Thanks for putting this together. I was able to listen to a part of it before the real job called. Has anybody said anything about Where's Waldo yet? I'm talking about Jamie Davis's shirt, because I think that's important. Am I the only one that noticed that he's wearing a Where's Waldo shirt? Sorry. It's great to see you guys.
Your humor, Mr. Joe, your humor. Joni, we're glad that you're back and among us, and a lot of prayers went out for you, and we're thinking about your family. All right, folks, I will put this into a recording. I'll copy the chats. I'm going to send out Jamie's email, and again, he says this is extremely confidential with this room only. And we'll see everybody till next time. Hopefully we'll have new updates by then. Thanks everybody for their comments and recommendations. Send out emails if you've got other ideas. See you guys.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Thanks, Jimmy. Great to host.
Thank you.